Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nashville, where we produce the Huckabee Show every week. Pam Casar is with me. Questions that you have sent in, and we hope that you will go immediately and send us in some questions. We would love to hear from you. You can also send us a super chat. That bumps it right up to the top of the list. Don't really understand how that works. I just answer the questions. I don't make up the rules. We want you to also know we have moderators who will be watching the chat. They'll be trying to make sure we get to as many questions as we can. But for you, we need you to subscribe. That's right. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll always know when we're going on with a live stream. And comment. Tell us what you think of our experiences together. Be sure to hit the like button and share it with your friends. Tell them that we are on live right now. That would be a wonderful thing to do. Hey, we got a lot of ground to cover, and it all started from something that happened this morning. I sat in disbelief at President Biden's news conference. He came out to talk about COVID. Of course, he didn't want to talk about the border, Afghanistan, the economy. No, he wanted to talk about COVID. But as soon as he went away for questions, it got a little dicey, and I want you to watch this exchange with a reporter about COVID, which he quickly decided he didn't want to talk. The reporter didn't want to talk about it. The reporter wanted to talk about the border. Watch what Joe says. We'll discuss it.
Given what we saw at the border this week, have you failed in that promise? And this is happening under your watch. Do you take responsibility for the chaos that's unfolding?
Of course I take responsibility. I'm president, but it was horrible what to see, as you saw. To see people treated like they did, horses barely running them over, people being strapped, outrageous. I promise you those people will pay.
You know, it's interesting. Joe Biden doesn't seem to have any problem with people illegally crossing our borders and invading us to the tune of about 1.5 million people this year so far. Think about that. That's okay. And they're coming in without vaccinations or masks or testing. But boy, he didn't like the fact that the Border Patrol agents used a procedure with the horses that they've been using for 100 years. And the photographer who shot the famous pictures that Joe Biden said showed them strapping, and you had other members of Congress losing their minds, even comparing those events to slavery, and said that they were being whipped, none of which was true. It's a lie. It's not just a misunderstanding. Folks, this is an outright lie. Joe Biden knows better. Surely he's got enough people on his staff who can say, Mr. President, when people are moving their horses and they're circling their reins, they're not hitting anybody. They're making sure that they control the horse and that the illegal immigrant who is illegally crossing the border can't grab the reins of the horse and either flip the rider or hurt the horse. He ought to be grateful that he had good Border Patrol people there. Instead, he says they're going to pay. Now, who was he talking about? It's going to pay. Not the illegals. No, they're going to be paid. He said that the people who are there to enforce the law are going to be severely consequenced. It's the most outrageous thing I've seen Joe Biden say or do in a long time, and I've seen some pretty crazy stuff that he has said. It absolutely was stunning to me, and I had to make myself think that he didn't mean it. But the truth is he did. Later, Kamala Harris, who is supposed to be in charge of the border, you know where she was? She was on The View this morning. She wasn't at the border. She was on The View, and she basically said the same thing. So it's clear that this is the company line that's coming out of the White House, that it's all the Border Patrol agents' faults. And I couldn't believe Biden says, I'm responsible, but then immediately says, well, really, it's those guys. How would you like to be a Border Patrol agent under this circumstance with that kind of person above you, basically not just throwing you under the bus, in this case, throwing you under the horse? All right, I want to show you now. This is Peter Doocy from Fox News asking Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, has Joe Biden ever been to the border and seen firsthand?
Has President Biden ever been to the southern border?
In his life?
Yes.
I will have to look back in my history books and check the times he's been to the southern border.
We have been looking all morning, and we cannot find any record of him visiting the border as president, vice president, senator, or even as a concerned citizen. Why would that be?
I can check and see when the last time or when he may have been.
Hey, Jen, while you're going to circle back with us, can I just give you a little hint? He hadn't been there. Okay? He hadn't. Because if he had, you would have known that. You didn't do your homework, but Peter Doocy did. And he had done the records check and found that Joe Biden had never been there. 40 years as a member of Congress, 8 as vice president. He's had several years as a private citizen. In between the 4 years, his vice presidency ended and he became president. So it's not like he hadn't had an opportunity. And in fact, all during those years as a senator or vice president, the taxpayers would have paid for his trip to go and take a look-see. He's never been. And Peter Doocy made the point. It was a very good point to make. Presidents typically show up at a point of disaster, whether it's a hurricane or a flood or a wildfire. Joe Biden's done that, and he should, and he's done it, and good for him. This is a disaster at the border. He hadn't shown up there. Why not? Because he doesn't want to see it. Do you get the picture now? He doesn't want to know. And he doesn't really want you to know. And that's why the federal government shut down the Fox News drone photography for a couple of days before they finally realized how stupid that looked. But the drone photography was letting us see the 15,000 people camped up under the bridge at Del Rio. Absolutely amazing. Here's another example of how the administration is trying to create a story that isn't there at all. This is Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, and he says on CNN that he will ban the term illegal immigrant. Watch this.
Mr. Secretary, how do you respond to the charge that the Biden administration, that the policy of the administration is inhumane and counterproductive?
Well, first of all, let me say that we don't use the term illegal immigrants. I actually issued a policy in the Department of Homeland Security. We use the term non-citizen.
Well, that's just lovely. But you know something? If you're going to do that, why don't you change the law? You know what the law says? The law uses the term illegal alien. And I know that's an offensive term to a lot of people. I don't mind it being changed to illegal immigrant. But to say non-citizen, no, this is not just a non-citizen. This is a person who has entered our country illegally. What part of that is so difficult, Mr. Secretary? And I'm sympathetic that people want to come to America. We have a long line of folks wanting to get in. You ever notice we don't have a line of people wanting to get out? If we're such a bad country, we're guilty of systemic racism, and we're so horrible and evil. If we are as bad as the 1619 Project and critical race theory says we are, how come there's not a long line of people begging to get out of here? There isn't a line. Nobody's trying to get out, not even the Hollywood people who always tell us if the election doesn't go their way, they're going to leave. They never do. I wish they would, but they don't because they're hypocrites. Anyway, that's what we're having to deal with. Pam, we may have some questions by now. Let's see.
Oh, we do. We do have some questions. I want to remind everybody, too, we are one-on-one with the governor right now. Certainly there's somebody in your area of influence, a friend, a relative. Share it right now with your friends so that you can be part of the discussion today. A little shout out first. We've got some folks from Missouri, Louisiana, Texas, Las Vegas, New Hampshire, right here in Tennessee, Florida, New York, even Alaska today and Arizona.
Lots
of absolutely. All right, here's a question for you, Governor. It really is, it goes along with what you were already talking about. And this is from Mark Smith concerning Biden's inaction to enforce the immigration laws at the border. The Supreme Court ordered him to put the Remain in Mexico policy back in place last month, but he's not done so. How can President Biden get away with ignoring the high court's order? And does the court have any authority to deal with his unwillingness to follow their decision?
One of the great challenges the court has, and it's why Thomas Jefferson in the Federalist Papers said that if there is a weak branch of the three equal branches, it's the judiciary, because they don't have any power to enforce. There's not much they can actually do. Their power is a power of influence. For example, if you're the executive branch, you have the power to arrest, you have the power to enforce. If you're the congressional or the legislative branch, you have the power of the purse, which means you can defund things and take their money away. If you're the court, basically you issue a ruling and you depend on the other two branches to make sure that the law is followed. Now, what I do want to remind you is that when you have a president who willfully defies a Supreme Court order, you really are setting up an interesting circumstance. And the question is, why isn't he forced Well, the question may be because the media isn't calling attention to his skirting of the order. If Donald Trump had simply ignored and thumbed his nose at the Supreme Court over anything, we'd still be hearing about it a year after he left office. And it's one of the reasons we're in such a mess we're in, because we do not have a legitimate, we do not have a curious, we do not have a professional or competent media for the most part. And it is hurting America for us not to have it. Mark, thank you for the question. Good observation.
Debbie Roberts writes, Governor, is it true that the ambassador of France left?
Yes. And the reason he left, Debbie, is because the nation of France recalled him. I just want to put this in perspective. France was our first ally. In the American Revolution in 1776, the first ally we had was France. They came to our assistance. Maybe not because they loved us so much as it was they hated the Brits. Doesn't matter why, they were with us. And they supplied arms and they assisted us. In the 250 some odd years that we have had a relationship with France, nothing like this has ever happened. It happened this past week, and it happened because Joe Biden so outrageously offended the French, for heaven's sakes, that they recalled their ambassador. And it's a diplomatic move. It's sort of like the ultimate in-your-face way to show disrespect, anger, and frustration. That's what they did. Now, add that to the fact that the UK did something they'd never done. Their parliament just a few weeks ago voted to censure Joe Biden for his bungling of Afghanistan withdrawal. So now you have two of the closest, if not the closest, other than Israel, allies we have, who have basically said, Joe, you're a complete mess up. I'll leave it at that.
Valerie Walker writes, have you heard about NAC? Crowder talked about it on Thursday. Government wants to stop you from getting it, but it helps with COVID-19 symptoms.
I got to admit, I'm not NAC.
NAC.
I don't know what that is. I'm not familiar with it. So I'll have to do a little looking up myself. I know that there's been a lot of controversy over some other methods, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. One of the things that's been such a lie is saying that ivermectin is a horse medicine and that it's only used for horses. In 2015, the people who developed ivermectin were given the Nobel Prize for Science for doing it, the human version of it. So that's been a canard that's been out there. Now, it hasn't been approved for use for treating COVID. Let's be fair and honest. But doctors have prescribed it for some of their patients with COVID because it appears to have been effective in certain cases if given early on. I'm not saying it does or doesn't work. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV either. But I'd rather the doctor makes the decision about that than some goofball who tweets all day long and somehow has a better idea of what medicine is than the doctors who went to med school. Same thing with hydroxychloroquine. It's a very inexpensive drug, as is ivermectin. I know I sound a little cynical, but do you think it might have something to do with it's only a couple of bucks worth of medication and the alternatives that the FDA is pushing cost thousands of dollars? And there's a lot more money to be made from those prescriptions than from some of the ones that don't cost anything. Who knows? Just throwing it out there.
All right, Gov. Carolyn Gordon writes us today, I heard Biden owes $500,000 in taxes for 2017 to 18. Are you aware?
Yes, I am. And I find it amazing. This is the guy who has been leaning into the microphone and says, we just want you to pay your fair share. Joe, maybe we could start with you paying your fair share. If you owe $500,000, that's more than most American families will make in 10 or 12 or 15 years. And if you owe that much in taxes because you failed to include the proper manner of ascribing your taxes for various C or S corporations that you hold and own, then I really don't think a lecture from you to the rest of us really is appropriate. You might want to kind of clean up your own stall before you stick your neck over into the neighbor's stall and tell him what he ought to be doing. Now, speaking of what maybe you should be doing, how about subscribing to the channel? That would be a good idea. Hit the notification bell so we can let you know when we're going to be doing things like this and putting videos out. Give us a comment. Tell us what you think, good, bad, or ugly. And be sure to hit the like button and share it with your friends. In fact, you might even want to share it with your enemies. Really mess up their Friday. Good fun with them. Anyway, thank you, Carolyn, for the question. And yes, it's outrageous to me. I don't want to overdo this, but there are a couple of clips I want to play. This is when Joe Biden was visiting in the Oval Office with Prime Minister Boris Johnson from the United Kingdom. Boris Johnson just throws out, hey, if you'd like to ask me some questions. I mean, that's what responsible public officials do. They make themselves available for the people's responsible press individuals to ask questions so that there can be transparency in government, something that Joe Biden promised us we would have. But I want you to watch how the White House press corps handles this. They went berserk because they were so afraid that their boss was going to be caught with a question that he had not been prepared for because his staff had not written down who was going to get to ask it. Watch this.
Unbalances the Belfast Good Friday Accords. That's the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. That's the. I think
This is bizarre. He's the president of the United States, and he acts like, what are they going to do? Are they going to ask me questions? Please rescue me, save me here. No, sir, you're the president. And you can't say, well, they told me not to answer questions. Who are they? You're the president, man. They work for you, not the other way around. Now, after this happened, in today's press conference, or really wasn't a press conference, it was a speech, it's very obvious. In fact, you'll notice that Biden is given a very specific list of the people he can call on. And here's what happens.
Thank you. ABC, Rachel Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And of course, he had no idea where she was, but he knew he had to call on her. Now, how did she get the nod? I don't know. I have no idea. But it's very, very obvious that this White House staff tells the president who he can call on. And in the case today, it was about 3 reporters. And then he just clapped his little folder together and turned his back. And like Forrest Gump, he ran for it. I mean, talking about running for the border. He's never been to the border, but this is a guy who runs for the border of the White House every time reporters start asking him questions. I got one more clip to play. When the reporters, after this fiasco with Boris Johnson happened, and here's what's interesting. This is from Ed O'Keefe, who's CBS. Ed is not a conservative. Ed is not a Fox News guy. He's CBS. And watch how he challenges Jen Psaki on what had happened at the White House with Boris Johnson.
What is your understanding of what transpired in the Oval Office yesterday when we were all in there trying to hear from the President and the Prime Minister?
Which aspect?
Well, the British Prime Minister in the American Oval Office called out British reporters, and then when American reporters tried to call in the American President, we were escorted out, let's put it that way.
Well, I think in that circumstance, and I think our relationship with the United Kingdom and with Prime Minister Johnson is so strong and abiding, we will be able to move forward beyond this. But he called on individuals from his press corps without alerting us to that intention in advance.
Oh, you think you might be able to continue working with the UK because the Prime Minister happened to allow questions and you had not cleared that? What on earth are we dealing with here? She never answered Ed O'Keefe's question. Why did we get run out? How come we didn't get to answer or to ask questions? Why did your guy sit there like a sculpture and just refuse with his mask on? He might as well put it over his eyes, for heaven's sakes. What's different? This is stunning. I'm sorry. I'm a little animated today because I'm just frustrated. It's not just that the administration is doing things that stick it right in your face, but it's that for the most part, with the exceptions of guys like Ed O'Keefe in this case, the press just doesn't seem to care. They don't hold this administration to the same standard that they would ordinarily hold any other president, even a Democrat president. They certainly wouldn't let Bill Clinton get off with this kind of stuff. And for the most part, they did let Obama get off with it. But boy, oh boy, have they ever just basically said, yes, sir, thank you, Mr. President. Can I have another one? I mean, it's like when the coaches in football would give you a whack across the rear end, and the required response was, thank you, coach. May I have another? And most of the time, the sadistic football coaches would say, sure, give you a few more. And that's what I feel like I'm watching when I'm watching these White House press people, again, with a few exceptions. They get pushed back and stiff-armed. And when they do, rather than stand up and act like responsible members of the media, they say, thank you, may I have another? And it's to all of our detriment that we are not getting answers to legitimate questions about what's happening at the highest levels of our government. All right, Pam, what have we got?
We've got more questions. We're so thankful for everybody taking their time out of their day-to-day to participate with us this afternoon. Still plenty of time, by the way, for questions to come in. Nancy Kiernan writes, will the Bidens ever get in trouble for peddling influence to other countries?
No, probably not. I mean, I hate to say it so bluntly, but it's apparent. Look, Hunter Biden, the latest revelation is that he made a pitch for a $2 million consulting contract with the government of Libya, so that he could peddle influence to his then vice president father. Now, I just, again, ask you this. If Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump were discovered to have been going to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Libya, anywhere, and saying, hey, my pop's the prez, and for a couple of $1 million in my pocket, I'll hook you up. Do you think we might have a little bit of uproar over that? I promise you we would have. And why isn't there uproar over this? Because the press is covering for this president. I've never seen anything like it. If you watch this news conference this morning, at the end, he kind of just went off script. And honestly, it made no sense. It was gibberish. I don't know if you saw, but any of you that were watching, I mean, I would hate to have tried to diagram the sentence because it wasn't a sentence. It was a phrase and then another disconnected phrase that disconnected with something else. And it was like an airplane circling. He never landed. And ultimately, he just crashed and walked out of the room. It was bizarre.
And our viewers today are right with you, those that have seen it, and the questions keep coming. T. Schaefer's writing, are Pelosi and her minions responsible for the persecution of the January 6th patriots who are still in jail? And now, of course, with the release, the footage, that the charges, will they be reduced or dropped? That happened today.
Yeah. Be sure to watch our video feature called Facts of the Matter. It'll be online probably later today. I address this in detail. And what's really starting to happen is a lot of these charges for which people have been sitting in jail without bond for months. And now the charges are being dropped down to mere misdemeanors for trespassing and things that really are not that big a deal. And they're being let go, paying a fine and kind of quietly ending it. I'm not saying there weren't some really stupid things and bad and criminal things that happened on January 6th, but to call it an insurrection, it was the lousiest insurrection ever mounted in the history of mankind. And there have been some pretty dumb attempts to overthrow a government, but if you're going to do it, you're going to do it with a little bit more muscle than those guys showed up with. I don't think that was their intent. I'm not sure what their intent was. Honestly, it was a boneheaded thing. And it was a failure, and it set us all back for a long time. And it gave people like Nancy Pelosi a lot of ammo, to pretend that this is the worst thing, worse than 9/11, worse than Pearl Harbor. They've actually said those things, which is beyond stupid to say those things.
All right, we continue. Trey Bratcher writes to us today. Where do you think the Republicans stand in the midterms? Looking ahead.
If things keep going like they are, they will overwhelmingly take the House, and they very well could take the Senate. I wish we had more what I'd call in-place Senate seats. It would be helpful. Some of the Senate seats that are up are Senate seats that are probably pretty safe for the Democrats. But there are a few that could flip. And I'm just hoping and praying that there are thoughtful people who identify as Democrats or independents who will look at what's happening to their country and will say, the wheels are coming off. And I can't stand by. And I can't just vote for my party because my party has lost its mind. Pam, let me give you a great example of this. I don't know if some of our viewers or if you happen to see, but the squad was leading a piece of legislation that would have taken $1 billion away from Israel for the Iron Dome. Now, what makes that so outrageous is that the Iron Dome is a defense mechanism so that when people are bombing Israel and trying to kill little kids in Israel, it's a defensive weapon. It is not an offensive weapon. The Iron Dome can't fire a missile at a country. It can only send something up to intercept a rocket that's coming in to kill innocent civilians. And so there's some of the more radical squad members like AOC and others who are pushing for this. To their credit, some thoughtful Democrats stood up and pushed back and said, this is crazy. You're going to take away Israel's ability to defend itself. Why would we do that? And they stripped that out and voted on it separately. So it's going to happen. And AOC is then famously walking around in front of every camera possible at the Capitol, weeping because she decided to change her vote from no to present. My point in all this is that when you hear people like Ayanna Pressley and Rashida Tlaib say that, you know, we shouldn't be arming Israel with weapons of war, these aren't weapons of war. The Iron Dome protects against a weapon of war. And again, I just want to say, for heaven's sakes, press, call them out. You shouldn't have to depend upon me. I mean, I'm a partisan. I don't deny that. I'm not a journalist, but I'm practicing more journalism accidentally than you guys who claim to be journalists are doing it on purpose every single day.
Still plenty of time to be part of the discussion today. You're talking one-on-one with Governor Huckabee. We are live right this minute. Don't forget to, of course, to subscribe and to click on that notification bell as well. Today, here's one from Adam Broker. Governor, on the issue of the Arizona audit. If it is shown and proven that Maricopa County is guilty of election fraud and the Arizona AG agrees, what happens when Arizona decertifies the election?
Well, it's too late to undo what's been certified. One of the things, and I know this is going to be uncomfortable, some of you will be very angry at me for what I'm about to say, but here goes. When the election results are certified, and that happened on December the 13th, the election was over. If there was any attempt to change what had been reported as election results, it had to be before the certification process, because once it's certified, you can't uncertify it. There's just no legal mechanism to do that. If there even was, we'd probably have fights that would last the entire 4 years of a president's term or a member of Congress's term or a senator's term, and it would just completely break up what ought to be an orderly process. So the way to fix it is to make sure that we have fair and honest elections, but to do it before the election day, not the day after. And frankly, once the election results are certified, at that point, it's over. That's why, by the way, that so many states and officials fought so hard in those days immediately after the election to keep from there being an audit. I said all along, if you guys are really comfortable and confident of the results, then aren't you going to demand an audit? Because that way, if it turns out as you say it will, all in your favor, you shut everybody up. So that was, to me, the red flag of all red flags that was going on between the election and the certification.
Gov, asked by Maria S. today, where's Jim Acosta? And how come he's not there asking his questions?
Acosta is apparently hosting a not very well-watched weekend on CNN.
Oh,
And it's so obscure that, you know, very few people watch CNN. Their numbers have tanked. They've lost 71% of their viewers since January.
wow.
That's actual numbers. 70% disappeared. I wonder who the 30 are that would still watch them, other than people stuck in an airport who don't have a choice. But Acosta was such a show, and he loved making a name for himself in the Trump White House by being a complete jerk. Anyway, CNN has sent him off to no man's land. And frankly, if we never hear from him again, that's soon enough for me.
I've got a place for the CNN viewers. They can join us for the show tomorrow night.
They sure
right
could,
here.
and they should.
And they
Yeah.
should. How about this? Vicky Brushwood asked, what does it take to make Biden resign? Why aren't people making a big writing protest to all of the representatives and senators? That man has lost it and needs to resign.
Well, I mean, I don't think we could send enough signatures that would make him say, boy, they really don't like me. I think I'll resign. I mean, we all can dream, but it doesn't really work like that. And I don't think he's going to resign unless there's some catastrophic medical condition that makes it so that there's no other option. I just don't see that happening. Do I think he will ever run again? No. I'm not sure he can finish the term. I'd see such diminished capacity in him. When he shuffles in to make a statement, he reads it. He doesn't read it very well. He gets lost. And when he gets off script, he really gets lost. He says stuff that if he doesn't know it's untrue, then I really worry, because he surely should know that some of the stuff that he's saying is untrue. So let me mention, well, go ahead.
Okay, one more over here,
Okay.
from another one from T. Schaefer, but a good one. Will the mandatory vaccines cripple our fighting forces if troops resign or are discharged for declining the jab?
Well, it very well could. You know, there are many service members who are saying they don't want a mandatory vaccine. Look, I understand that some people are reluctant, and the younger you are, the maybe more reluctant you should be, because we don't know the long-term effects. If you're as old as me, taking the vaccine makes a lot of sense. That's why I took it. I've got friends who have died. I've got another one who's in ICU right now. The word I got this morning, she may not make it through the day. That worries me. It breaks my heart. Lovely human being. So I think when people get my age or older, taking the vaccine's a much better idea than taking the risk of COVID. But it's still your decision, and you got to do what you think is best for you and your family in consultation, not with the internet, but in consultation with your doctor or healthcare provider. But take COVID seriously. But I don't like the idea of saying we're going to fire you. I love this. There was a employer, he was being told, you know, that if he had more than 100 employees, they had to be vaccinated, you know, by mandate. And he had 104. And they said, what are you going to do? You got, you know, 4 more than you should have. You're going to have to force him. He said, no, I won't. I'm going to fire 5 Democrats. Then I'll have 99. I'll be under the mandate. And I thought, what a great idea. Yeah. Be sure to leave your comments in the comments section for the day. Remember, you can also get in touch with us at my2cents@tbn.tv. That's an email address you can send to. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and be sure to watch the show tomorrow night. It is going to be amazing. Guess who our musical guest is? Meatloaf. It is going to be awesome. I'm so excited. And we have just a wonderful show with an amazing acrobat that I can't wait to see in person. It's going to be an extraordinary show this weekend, 8 and 11 Saturday, 9 on Sunday. All of those are Eastern time, so make the adjustments for your time zone. We will see you this weekend. Thanks for joining us.
This week on Huckabee, Congressman Mark Green on Biden's latest blunders. God's Not Dead filmmaker David A.R. White.
They say you work for us.
The one-wheel wonder Wesley Williams. And rock opera legend Meatloaf perform. Watch Huckabee on Saturday at 8, 7 Central, and again on Sunday at 9, 8 Central, right here on TBN.